General, Mr. Geoffrey Cock.
Mr. Speaker, as the Honourable Lady knows, the Supreme Court gave judgment on this issue yesterday. And that judgment sets out the definitive and final legal position on the advice given to Her Majesty on the prorogation of Parliament. The government's legal view during the case was set out and argued fully before the Supreme Court. The hearing was streamed live, and the government's written case was and is available on the Supreme Court website. I took a close interest in the case. And I oversaw the government's team of counsel. And I have to say, Mr. Speaker, that if every time I lost a case I was called upon to resign, I probably would never have had a practice. And the government accepts. The government accepts the judgment and accepts that it lost the case. And at all times, the government acted in good faith and in the belief that its approach was both lawful and constitutional. These are complex matters on which senior and distinguished lawyers will disagree. And the divisional court, led by the Lord Chief Justice, as well as Lord Doherty in the Outer House of Scotland, agreed with the government's position. But we were disappointed that in the end the Supreme Court took a different view. And of course, we respect the judgment of the court.
With your assistance, we could have entertained motions against it or even a motion of no confidence. So it was a coup, wasn't it?
Well, I know that my right honourable friend will know that I want to be, if I can, and when it comes to the judges, though not to this shower, but when it comes to the judges, I want to be respectful and careful. And it is important that we should understand that these judges are protectors of all our freedoms and all our rights.
Order. I don't normally offer stylistic advice to the Attorney-General, but his tendency to perambulate while orating is disagreeable to the House. He should face the House with confidence and assurance and an acknowledgement that the House wishes to hear his every utterance. The Attorney-General.
I wonder if you, Mr. Speaker, in a well-earned retirement, would like to give lessons to front benchers. It could be our beginnings of a new and very glorious, or even more glorious, career. I've now lost my thread entirely. They say they want me to sit down, so I'm going to. We'll gratify the opposition.
Mr. Barry Sherman.
Mr. Speaker, I came into the chamber today thinking I felt sorry for the Attorney-General. But as he started, I did. Fair enough. But every word he has uttered, no shame today, no shame at all. The fact that this government cynically manipulated the prorogation to shut down this House so that it couldn't work as a democratic assembly. He knows that that is the truth. And to come here with these barristers' bluster to obfuscate the truth, and for a man like him, a party like this, and a leader like this Prime Minister, to talk about morals and morality is a disgrace!
I'm not sure I could discern in that marshmallow of the rhetoric any actual question. But insofar there was a question, there's an answer. If the honourable gentleman thinks that the government should no longer be governing, tell his leader to bring a motion of no confidence this afternoon? Tell his leader to agree to a simple one-line statute that fixes the election by a simple majority, and we would be delighted to meet him as an aspirant to even higher office, constructive, helpful, impartial, and a model to us all.
That's killed it. I think, but I'm not sure, that the Attorney General is seeking to help the honourable gentleman. Charlie Elphick.
Mr. Speaker, can I ask the Attorney General and that those reasons were not true?
That, if I may say so, is what we used to call in advocacy terms a "when did you stop beating your wife" question. The reality is I don't accept the premise of the question. There is no question that the Supreme Court found in any way that any advice that had been given that was consciously or knowing misleading.
Whittingdale.
Would my right friend agree that there is a judgment which is superior to that of any courts, and that is the judgment of the British people, which has once been given on the question of whether or not this country should remain a member of the European Union, but has twice been prevented from being expressed in a vote of this House? And is it not now time that we should allow them to give their judgment on this?
Spoke about the phrase, when did you last stop beating your wife? Now, part of the reason people are so upset about the prorogation is because the domestic violence bill has fallen, as my honourable friend has just mentioned. Mr. Speaker, can I seek your advice on how maybe the Attorney General can learn to moderate his language and not make jokes about domestic violence?
Well, it's open to the Attorney to respond if he so wishes, although he's not obliged to do so. Very briefly, the Attorney.
Let me say, if I give an offence, I certainly didn't mean to. It's an old saying at the bar, which is... Listen. Which is simply relates to a cross
of order, frankly, in old-fashioned O-level terms, with which I'm familiar and of which the honourable gentleman is probably aware, that would get an unqualified. I'm afraid it wasn't even a good try. I don't bear any ill will to the honourable gentleman, but if people are going to have a go at these things, a degree of nuance, subtlety and ingenuity would at least command respect. But there is a grade, and I'm afraid it was way, way, way below the grade. Yes, OK. Point of order. If it's on these matters, but not beyond. Point of order, Hannah Bardell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and apologies I did not give you advance notice. During the exchange just before, the Attorney General said this Parliament is a dead Parliament.
View that, but we have no reason to think we have no reason to think that there is anything untoward in this particular matter. And to just finally address the range of issues that she raised at the end of her question, if she wants to raise matters about a grant that was awarded by officials through the proper process, then this is, of course, a completely legitimate forum. If she wants to use this to try and spread tittle-tattle that is much more around politics, then I would say that she should think very carefully before doing that.
Damien Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome what the Minister said about the review being conducted in the Department. He'll know that the Secretary of State is due to give evidence.
That he has tried twice and failed twice to get through this House. An article in BuzzFeed reveals that the data collected through the Get Ready for Brexit campaign is being centrally collected, and I've been inundated by concerned civil servants who are worried about what his government is asking them to do. Yep. When was it decided to collect that data? By whom? And with what purposes? And what security is he providing to the 15 million citizens who use .gov.uk each week? And what help has he given to the
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. The Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, deliberately dodging questions this afternoon, suggests that he still hasn't got his head round the scrutineering role that this House has over the government. Perhaps he should refer to Supreme Court's ruling again from yesterday. So there are a couple of difficult questions I would have liked to ask, but I won't, around statutory safeguards for EU citizens in the UK in the event of no deal, or being determined not to have a hard border in Ireland actually is no solution at all, and we still don't have any practical proposals brought forward from the government. So instead, I'll give him a really simple question, if I may. What was the date, for the fifth or sixth time of asking this afternoon, that the government changed the title of the Yellowhammer document? What was the date?
Well, I'm very grateful to the honourable lady for reminding me of the vital importance of the role that this House plays in scrutiny, and it's one that I take exceptionally seriously. And it is the case, as has always been the case, that we have a base scenario based on unarguable facts and a reasonable worst-case scenario, and that has always been the case.
Mr. Speaker, I recently visited farmers in my constituents, including Jim Cowan, to discuss the impact of their already fragile business of Brexit. They and the NFU are worried sick that farms will close down, and they're not convinced by the government's rhetoric. The Minister said they were mitigating the effects on farmers. How?
There are several steps that we can take. The first and most important is making sure that we have an appropriate tariff regime, which